When we think about ancient Israel, it's pretty easy to picture the geography as just, well, a scenic backdrop. But it was so much more than that. It was an active force, a real character in the story that shaped pretty much everything, from daily life and epic conflicts to these incredible tests of faith.
So that brings up a huge question, right? Why was this tiny little strip of land a constant, relentless battleground? How did this one small territory become the stage for so many monumental clashes throughout history? The answer, it turns out, is both simpler and more profound than you might think.
The answer is all about location, location, location. It was the land between. See, this place was the one and only land bridge connecting the great empires of the ancient world, Egypt to the south and Mesopotamia and Anatolia to the north and east. That meant it was basically a superhighway for armies, a crossroads for culture, and, yeah, a permanent hotspot for conflict.
So you can imagine, this geographic pressure cooker became a spiritual one too. For the Israelites, their very survival in this land between, planted right between giants, was a constant and intense test of their covenant relationship with God.
Okay, so let's dive into our first example of this. We're going to head to a contested zone called the Shephelah. Think of this as the southern front line, a series of rolling hill foots where two completely different worlds were just destined to collide.
The name Shephelah literally means lowlands, but a better way to think of it is as a geographical and cultural shock absorber. It's really fascinating, actually. When the Israelites were strong, they'd push west down into it. When their enemies were strong, they'd push east up into it. It was the ultimate middle ground, always in flux.
And man, what a contrast it was. Up in the hills, you have the Israelites. They're isolated, protected by the terrain, mostly farmers, and pretty traditional. But then, down on the coastal plain, you've got the Philistines. Cosmopolitan, open to the sea, wealthy, powerful, and crucially, they have advanced weaponry. This wasn't just a border dispute. It was a total clash of cultures playing out across these hills.
Now, cutting right through the Shephelah are these valleys that run east-west. And you got to understand, these weren't just scenic passes. They were basically highways pointing straight into the Israelite heartland. If an enemy army could control one of these valleys, they had a wide-open door to the entire hill country.
And that is exactly what sets the stage for one of the most famous stories ever told. The Philistines see their opening. They pour their army into the Elah Valley, which is basically an express route aimed directly at a pretty vulnerable little town up in the hills, a town you've probably heard of, Bethlehem.
And this quote from David, wow, it just lays out the real stakes perfectly. For David, this wasn't about military tactics or, defending a piece of dirt. The battle for the Elah Valley was a theological showdown. It was a defense of God's name on a very specific, very strategic piece of land.
Okay, let's shift gears and head to our second battleground. We're moving north to Mount Carmel. Now here, the threat wasn't a physical army with swords and spears. No, this was an invasion of ideas, a cultural and religious war that threatened the very soul of the nation.
So how did this happen? Well, it all started with politics, as these things so often do. King Omri moves his capital west, which kind of opens the door to foreign influence. Then his son, Ahab, goes and marries the Phoenician princess Jezebel. And together, they don't just tolerate her religion, they actively make the worship of the storm god Baal the new state religion. So the stage is set for this massive spiritual war. And where does it happen? Mount Carmel. And believe me, this was no random choice. This mountain range was the literal geopolitical boundary between Israel and Phoenicia. The fight was going to happen right on the border between two gods, so to speak. And here's what makes the location so provocative. Baal was supposedly the god of rain, storms, and fertility. And Mount Carmel? It's this famously lush, green mountain that juts out into the sea, catching all that moisture. It was considered Baal's prime real estate. So the prophet Elijah is literally picking a fight on Baal's home turf. And the challenge itself is just pure drama. The land's in the middle of a brutal 3-year drought. Elijah confronts 450 of Baal's prophets, builds an altar, and then, get this, he soaks the whole thing with precious water, which was like gold at that point. So when he calls down fire from heaven and the rains finally return, it's this stunning, decisive victory, proving who really controls the weather, right in Baal's supposed backyard. All right, for a final location, we're going to jump way forward in time to the New Testament era, and we're heading to the western coast. This is where the Roman Empire built a massive doorway into Judea, the port city of Caesarea. But, the thing about doorways is that they swing both ways. And this right here is the great, beautiful, ironic twist of Caesarea's whole story. Herod the Great built this magnificent port for one reason: to flood what he saw as a provincial backwater with sophisticated Roman culture. But history, or maybe God, had a very different plan. It would be used for the exact opposite purpose.
I mean, you really can't overstate what an epic undertaking this was. Herod built a state-of-the-art harbor with revolutionary underwater cement, a massive temple to Caesar, a theater, a hippodrome, aqueducts. He was literally building a slice of Rome right there on the Judean coast. This was meant to be a gateway for imperial power and influence, period.
But Herod's entire grand project, it was about to get flipped completely 180 degrees on its head.
And here it is, the incredible punchline of history. The very port that was designed to bring the Roman Empire in became the launchpad that sent a new faith out. It's right here in Caesarea that the gospel is first shared with a Roman centurion, and it's from this very port that the Apostle Paul set sail on his epic journey to Rome itself.
So, from the Elah Valley to Mount Carmel to the port of Caesarea, you see it again and again. The geography of this land was never just a passive backdrop. It was actively shaping its destiny. And it kind of leaves us with this big question, doesn't it? Humans build their grand projects, their kingdoms of stone. But when you look back across the centuries, whose kingdom and whose purpose truly endures?